Hi, everyone. Welcome to this week's SIG scheduling weekly meeting. And this meeting is being recorded. So because that's what I say, that will be public. So let's go through the agenda. So one thing about the next release, the 120 release, is that I think middle of this month will be the code freeze. So if you have some critical code checkings, make sure you catch up the deadline. And after that, so in theory, we only accept for the bug fixes, so the significant sort of changes. And the first one I want to mention is that due to the bandwidth, we decided to postpone the schedule config v1 beta 2 API. So that also means some associated feature have to be postponed, like some feature like prefer nominating node during the preemption, as well as some others like I think there is some refactoring work ongoing there. So be aware of that. Yeah,
wait.
Adel, go ahead.
Yeah, I think adding new fields is not a problem, but it's mostly about all the deprecation ideas that we had that we cannot no longer do. Does that make sense?
Sorry.
So new fields are not a problem. They could still be added to V1 beta.
V1 beta 1, okay. Mm-hmm.
If they make it on time before the code freeze. It's just all the deprecation things that we planned that we cannot do.
I see. Okay. Okay. Yeah, I saw some items says that it will do some refactoring and there's some fields adding to V1 beta 2. I guess those items will be sort of reverted to be updated the V1 beta 1 fields if it can catch up this release. Is that the ongoing plan?
For which fields?
I think there is someone, but I can't tell the exact issue number.
Okay. Yeah, we can still review those PRs.
Yeah, if they can catch up the data, we can make them merge in this release. All right. And next two items, bug fixes. Some users reported. Not too big bugs, but some annoying things. Like for example, the first one is that if a path specify a non-exist topology key during the topology spread constraint, and there is a bug in your code to schedule this part, but that is not the desired behavior. So that bug has been fixed and backported. And the other one is that the feature gate, the local storage capacity isolation, which controls the ephemeral storage field in the path spec. If that feature gate is disabled, the scheduling behavior doesn't honor that. So that bug was also fixed and backported. These two are small fixes, be aware of that. And the next one is a proposal raised by Aldo, which is to, Aldo, would you go over that into more details? The default affinity things.
Right. So we have an existing plugin called node labels, which basically allows you to restrict to avoid some nodes from scheduling. So this feature we kind of wanted to get rid of because you could do it with node affinity. But we came to the realization that it's actually useful. It's actually useful in the context of multi-scaling profiles, so that you can basically tie a profile to a specific set of nodes, and this way, your pods don't have to specify that node affinity. They only need to specify the scalar profile, and that will be linked to an affinity. So that's what this feature is. It's adding some default affinity to apply to the plugin, and this means that a pod or a node needs to satisfy both the default affinity and the pod's node affinity if they have any. So it's an AND semantic. So the PR is out there. The only question now is whether we want to name it default node affinity or default affinity or something else. The problem being that we have default topology spreading and default in this sense, default spreading means if the pod doesn't specify anything, we apply this default spreading. But in the case of node affinity, the semantics is different. We want to apply both. So yeah, that's the question there. There's a couple of suggested names. If you can go ahead and put your thoughts down, or if you are really against this change, also let us know. There is only one caveat, which is daemon set pods. Since the profiles are not shared with controller manager, if you use this feature, this default affinity, and you're scaling, you're creating a daemon set, then the daemon set will create the daemon set controller will create pods that will not be scalable. So that's something to be aware of, and it will be properly documented. But that's the only caveat.
Yeah. So yeah, as the other mentioned, the only concern is that we may need to document properly that we may recommend the daemon set to be aware of this kind of limitation if you're using the default affinity.
Right. So the recommendation will be that that you should have a profile without default affinity, and that profile should be used for daemon sets.
Daemon set, yeah. Yeah, so it's still being discussed, and this hasn't been merged. So if you have any option, just visit that. Next item is from Mike Dean from the scheduler strategy to rebalance the path which has the topology spread constraint. So Mike.
Yeah, I just wanted to quickly mention this, that this has gone through a lot of reviews so far. I know I talked to UA about that, and I think we decided that for just at least an initial release of this, we're going to keep it to like regular rebalancing and keep some of the edge cases like conflicting topologies and stuff for later iterations of this. But it's gone through a bunch of rounds of review now, and just if there's anyone that wants to give it another look, would really appreciate it. I think it's ready for a final review at this point. The descheduler isn't strictly bound to the code freeze deadline, but we do like to try to keep things around that time frame. So if anyone has any final concerns about it or things that they want to throw in, just feel free to hop into that PR there and give some review.
Minor question, is the support only for filters, or I mean, meaning harder spreading, or also soft?
Yeah, that was one part that we got in review, is that this can just be for hard constraints right now. So the do not schedule.
Sounds good.
Yep. I think there's a to-do for that we added.
Thank you, Mike. Next one is from Aditya. Update on API priority and fairness.
Yeah, I'll just make this quite quick. So for the past month or so, I've been working on API server priority and fairness, which would give us significant improvements in our scheduler throughput. That is the end goal, basically. But of course, since this is a more central change, since it happens in API server, there needs to be a lot more testing around that. So the TLDR is we are going to be graduating API priority and fairness to beta 120. And with that, it'll be turned on by default. So we can start looking into removing the API server QPS and burst limits in the scheduler, kube scheduler, so that we can entirely move to server-side rate limiting through API priority and fairness. This would need to happen post 120, and there's still some minor issues here and there with API priority and fairness, but yeah, we are definitely on track for beta graduation in 120. In case you're not familiar with API priority and fairness, it's just a new way for the API server to handle requests in a more fair way from multiple clients, so that no particular client can overload the API server, for example. That's it, basically. I should have said that first, but yeah. Thanks.
Yeah, so in terms of the scheduler, I think it's still too early to sort of adopt that to do some like configuration changes, right?
Right. Yeah. So right now we only have on the scheduler side we only have one configuration when talking to the API server, the QPS and burst limits for all communications with the API server. Right now we kind of limit that to I think 50 or something like that. But from my initial benchmarks, it looks like we can reach all the way up to 1,000 pods per second as the scheduling throughput with API server and API priority and fairness. This is on a very small cluster, and for larger clusters, the performance is lower, but we can work on that in the future once API priority and fairness is inside API server.
Yeah, okay. Thank you. I think that's pretty much for today. Lastly, there's some fix I'm trying to fix. So some ones are a little weird, and I found some interesting phenomena. So if you're interested, you're welcome to check out some case analysis. For example, the preemption, not this one. The test preemption races has a very interesting phenomena that I spent a lot of time analysis this. Yeah, if you're interested, you're welcome to check out the details. So that's pretty much for today's meeting. If you have any things to discuss, you can just raise it up. All right, seems we're good. So with all the items ongoing, and if you have any questions, review requests, just ping us on Slack, and you have 30 minutes back. Thanks for joining today's meeting. See you next time.
See you.
Bye.
Thanks.